Hello everybody, Yakri here with another Warframe video. This time I'm making the decision to perhaps foolishly tie my real identity even more obviously to my YouTube one. I say more obviously because unfortunately I have been on the internet so long, if you Google Yakri, there's like a disturbing amount of personal information on me available, and I can't get rid of all of it. But anyway, so I've updated my personal website because I am like I said, I'm kind of a looking for work programmer. So I have a personal website, and I've added a subsection to it for a Warframe tier list. I'm probably going to, I don't really like the way I've kind of just hacked it in as is, and eventually I'm going to try and get a subdomain and do some more fancy shit with this. But, or possibly purchase a second domain, but I'm also broke, which is why I'm not doing that. But anyway, I've posted a Warframe tier list on this website, and I'm going to link it in the video description, but of course you can see it, you know, like right there. I might be able to link it in the end card of the video too. Wait, my finger, it's up. I really did a lousy job of pointing up there. It's up there in the search bar. It's in there, and yeah, I'll link it a few different places. Anyway, so it's a tier list of Warframes. So it's a Warframe tier list, and it's also literally a Warframe tier list. It's a tier list of Warframes. Hey, okay. So why did I want to do this? Well, I had my own tier list a while back, or my own variant on a many times split off community tier list that someone made that I updated for a couple patches, and then it was an insane amount of work to keep it going. And I thought, you know, it'd be really nice to do it in my own format, because they had this, you know, fucking Excel sheet, and I thought it would be really nice to have my own like website for it and styling and everything. And so I've done that, and it's a work in progress still. I would like to make it a little bit fancier, and of course I might rework the positioning quite a bit. But anyway, let's actually get into the tier list, and why I think a tier list is important in a game, even in a game like Warframe, and how I've set it up and what my plans are for the future, and also in terms of like, you know, improving the coverage of the tier list. Okay, so basically this is a tier list of the actual Warframes in the game. Okay, as you can see it down here. I'm sure some people are already seeing arguments with me. Feel free to post them in the comments. I'm happy to hear your reasoning. That said, I will be keeping this. I don't really believe in like community sourced balance information and opinion pieces. And those seem to be fairly popular, but I feel like they're often less accurate than one person who is fairly knowledgeable about a game just compiling their own tier list. So that's what I'm doing. However, you know, if you want to try and change my opinion on something, you're free to try, and you may very well succeed. Anyway, so S tier, right? The idea is that the Warframes in S tier are able to do all game content effectively, except for maybe one thing. So if a Warframe is effective all throughout the game, except for Eidolon hunting, because they're immune to most of the Warframes in the game, sure, they get a pass. Or if they're great everywhere, including Eidolon hunting, but not ESO, or not like exterminate missions, who gives a fuck? Okay, they're still in S tier. Now, if in many situations they could be totally interchangeable with another Warframe, or there's another Warframe that might do better than them in quite a few situations, they're not in S tier. S tier Warframes are mostly a little bit on the OP side, I would say. Some of them don't really need changes. Like the cream of the crop in the S tier is probably Trinity and Rhino, and I might say that they're actually a little bit overpowered. But the rest of them are probably, you know, fine. But I don't feel that the difference between them is quite enough that like Trinity and Rhino deserve like an S+ tier quite at the moment. Maybe I'll do that in the future. But yeah, anyway. So A tier is they can do most of the game content. So this isn't like there's one exception. This is like, okay, they're really good in all endless missions, but not regular missions, not Eidolon hunts, you know, not spy missions. Or, you know, they're not good in Eidolon hunts or spy missions, or, you know, easy missions, but they're good in any harder missions, or the other way around, to a certain degree. Yeah, so, and then the thing is that these guys are usually second choice for if you're building, like, the optimal squad for, going late in survival or something like that, right? Or a late in a defense mission. So B tier is where you're still in the set of Warframes that are quite good, and they're just like, they're not quite as ideal as one Warframe is, as some other Warframe is for many of the jobs that they can do in the game, but they're still very good, and the difference isn't very significant, and they still have some niches where they are better than the some Warframe that would be an A or S tier that's usually better for their role. And then we've got C tier, which is like, you know, niche Warframes that are really like, they're not necessarily strong or good, but there's like one area where they still at least keep up with like the A and S tier Warframes, even if they're not better than them at even their own niche. And then D tier is where, like, even in the niche that they're in, whatever their niche is, they're not the best option, and they're generally not very good at other. And then, like, for many other things, like, they're outclassed by like multiple other Warframes, and so they're just kind of in this awkward situation here. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have no use at all. It just means that their use is like super limited, and then there's someone else who does the same job better, even if maybe you want to use both once in a while, but still. Yeah. Okay, so let me give you some examples. I don't want to justify every single Warframe's position in detail in this video. I would like to expand my website and include, you know, at least a blurb on each Warframe and what my reasons for putting them in a given tier were, you know, and maybe track changes or something like that, but not today. Sometime, eventually I want to do that. Anyway, so like, for example, Rhino, right? So Rhino is a really good buff frame, probably like at least like in close contention for best buff frame in the game, since Rhino's roar affects Warframe abilities and weapon damage, and it's multiplicative. He has very good CC, very good tank, like extremely good tank. As long as you don't run into nullifier bubbles, he may be the best non-invulnerable tank in the game right now. He has the capacity to actually nuke extraordinarily high, much higher than most people think. And his baseline stats are quite good, and he's really good for Eidolon hunting. He's pretty much good for everything except perhaps spy missions. He's good in low and high level missions. He's fairly easy to play. There's like not really any downside to him, right? So that's why he is in S tier, right? He outclasses multiple Warframes in A and B tier at like crowd control. He outclasses some Warframes in A and B tier at damage buffing, and he outclasses basically everyone who's not invulnerable at being tanky right now. So yeah, that's why Rhino's here. And for a similar but different example, Equinox is in S tier because Equinox is the best nuke frame in the game probably now. Definitely the best room clear, I would say, with the downfall of Link Trinity. And Equinox is really good in all levels of missions, even in spy missions, actually, for her ability to break things through walls and kill enemies through walls, and the initial stun from Slash. She's actually surprisingly good at spy missions. Obviously not nearly as good as Loki or Ivara, but still better than a lot of Warframes in like B, C, and D tier would be. Yeah, pretty much the only thing Equinox is notably not good at is Eidolon hunting. So yeah. And Trinity's, you know, like I said, Trinity and Rhino are kind of the cream of the crop in S tier because they're good everywhere. Trinity especially, right, her energy pulse is so good that it kind of completely breaks the energy economy in the game. That's something I can't say about, say, Haro, who has quite a good energy giving ability, but it's not really game breaking. It takes too much work to make it work. And Trinity's ability does not take that much work to make it work. I'm saying I made myself jiggle a little bit there. It does not take very much work for Trinity's ability to work, and the actual impact of it is much higher, right? The numerical like amount of energy you get back, you get it much faster, you get it much higher amount for much lower investment, much lower time commitment, much easier to use. It's just so insanely good, and the thing is that capability is useful basically anywhere in the game where you can find enemies. It's useful for a squad. I am assuming squad play. A solo tier list would look different. Maybe I'll assemble one separately at some point in time, but this isn't it. Although, you know, like all the S tier frames are pretty good at solo, and all the A tiers are also going to be fairly good at solo, just because by nature of being quite powerful. But then you have some weird ones. Like, let me give you an example. Would be really good. I'd say Wukong and Valkyr are unusually good at solo. Because of invulnerability, right? Ivara is also particularly good at solo because of how long-lasting her invis is, and some of the like combo things that I value in these other frames fall off a little bit more if you're not playing in a squad. Lose a little bit of their value if you're by yourself. Chroma also probably goes up to like S tier for solo play, as does Nidus. Anyway, so point is, Trinity's got that one ability that's super good, right? And it outclasses every other energy-giving ability in the game. Then she's got another ability that does the same fucking thing, right? Her ultimate, Blessing, is insanely good. Best heal in the game. And it also gives DR to your entire party. It's not the best DR to your party in the game. I think that would be Shatter Shield from Gara. But you can give it to everyone with a really easy cast, huge radius. And it also heals them to full HP. It's just so good. So insanely good, and it just completely like wrecks every other healer in the game. And so you've got the situation where Trinity just pushes other Warframes down in comparison to her, basically. Because why would you bring a different healer when you could be bringing Trinity? Why would you bring a different energy generator when you could be bringing Trinity? There's very few reasons. There are some niches where like Harrow might excel a little bit better or might be useful alongside of Trinity, but yeah, she's a little oppressive, I think, in the meta, and probably needs a proper rework of some kind, probably making her heal, nerfing her heal and energy giving abilities while giving her some other utility to compensate so she's not just crap. Anyway, point is, that's why Trinity's in S tier. And let's give us an example, like Zephyr, right? Why is Zephyr in B tier? Well, her abilities don't really do very much. I've got a whole video on Zephyr somewhere, and you know, pretty much what I cover is that like her abilities have very little impact. Her ultimate is not the best CC. It makes it really hard to actually hit enemies, which is bad. Her bullet deflection thing is pretty good, except that it doesn't work on everything, which is unfortunate. And basically the reason, though, she does have a strong niche, which is in Plains of Eidolon. You can zip around in the sky, and she's fucking awesome for that. I pretty much almost exclusively play her for Plains of Eidolon if I'm not doing Eidolon hunts. Because she's so great at it. And so she really is like a niche where she fits in there. And like, you know, and another thing to keep in mind is that this tier list is not about which Warframes I subjectively prefer. It's not about how much fun they are to play. Like, for example, you know, for those of you who watched my stream where I was playing Atlas, I had a blast. Did I do a stream playing Atlas? Yeah, I did. I totally did. Well, I'm very forgetful. Anyway, I totally did, and I had a blast playing Atlas. And I haven't changed my opinion on him in that way at all. It's just that his doesn't have like a huge amount of squad impact. He punches things and does crazy good damage with it. Okay, well, Equinox can like shoot one guy and then clear a room. So by comparison, not that amazing. Chroma can just, you know, boost his weapon damage insanely high while boosting his squad's weapon damage insanely high, then fire a weapon like the Ignis around and still get like a similar amount of slaughter to Atlas. Atlas has like a nice package of things, and they make him really fun to play, and he's fairly good. I don't necessarily, and what would make Atlas A tier? Well, if his like rumblers were reworked to be a little bit more impactful in the game baseline, and if his walls were improved in some way, just maybe he can get like 2 by default or something, and then how he makes them roll is by punching them or something, so he gets a little bit more flexibility. And you know, maybe he'd move up to A tier then, right? And it's debatably, you know, you could say like, oh, I want to move him up one down one tier. Okay, you know, it's how to put it. The tier list, though, is meant to be objective. However, keep in mind that just because it's meant to be objective doesn't mean I'm 100% correct on everything. I just want to make this point clear, though, that it's not an attempt. Oh man, I garbled that really badly. An attempt to objectively justify the relative power level of the classes, the Warframes, in the game. And that's something that is absolutely possible. I get a lot of people making comments about how tier lists are subjective, blah, blah, blah. You can't make an objective game comparisons about balance. I really have no idea where that opinion comes from. You absolutely can make objective balance comparisons. In fact, kind of have to. It is a very objective topic. You know, games are kind of deterministic. They run on numbers, and yeah, it can be complicated to figure out. It can be difficult. Now, this is what I get from muting my phone. It can be difficult to figure out what is the best, you know, thing in a game. It can be very challenging, but there are tiers. There is balance. Some things are better than other things. If they weren't better, or if the only way that they could be you know, equally perfectly balanced is if they were the same, and that wouldn't be very much fun. So, you know, in order for Trinity and Equinox to be different and do different things, they have to be inherently one of them has to be inherently less useful than the other, right? Because it does different stuff. And if we had perfect knowledge of the game and you were like perfectly logical, you could figure out exactly how much better or worse one is than the other and how to rank them. So Obviously, I'm not that awesome, but I'm trying to at least be objective in my placement of frames in the tier list. Okay, so like we got where do we got here? Actually, I don't really enjoy any of the lower tier frames because once we go to C and lower, these frames have some problem. Actually, no, I still enjoy Ember. I take that back. These frames start to have some problems. And that's where I think like things are so weak that they probably need to be buffed down here. Wukong, and there's some like Wukong who's not very fun, but he's actually quite good because he is invulnerable and can use guns while invulnerable, and that's super good. And his particular variety of invulnerability is pretty strong, and its drawbacks are fairly negligible, which means that he's a very good Warframe. But he's boring as fuck to play. Only one of his abilities is any good. He absolutely needs a rework and buff. Okay, so anyway. Wonder if is there anyone in Limbo probably needs a proper rework. Chroma needs a proper rework. Even in the A list, I would say that they don't necessarily play well, but they play powerfully. Does that make sense? All right. To sort of recap, right, in different words, this list is about evaluating the ability for Warframes to beat game content effectively and efficiently in a group. Right? That's what this is. If you're solo, it's going to be different. If you don't care about being effective, it's going to be different for you. Yeah, but that's the whole purpose of the tier list, right? To see what's good. It's not to tell you what you should play or anything or what you're going to have fun with, but it's kind of a nifty thing to think about when you're considering relative power of things. And when you're, especially from like a balance perspective, why should Nyx be buffed, right? Or why should Ember be buffed? Well, it's because they are weaker relative to other Warframes. And this doesn't, of course, get into the reasons why, but it's basically because, like, Nyx has a really non-existent niche, right? The niche that she fits into just doesn't exist. She's tanky, but she's not actually that tanky compared to frames like Rhino. Her form of tankiness is very awkward, especially compared to bullshit OP tanky abilities like Wukong's invulnerability. And her other abilities are kind of counterproductive to how you want to play Warframe. And like Ember, she has a niche. It's walking through lower level missions and letting everything die around her. That still works very well despite the changes that DE made to her. And it's just not a very great or useful niche. It doesn't make her very effective overall. And it kind of implies, in fact, that she has issues in the fact that she's not useful in very much other content. So, yeah. That's kind of the idea here. Like I said, this is a work in progress. I'll probably adjust a few of these up or down in the next few days, but this is what I started working on this like yesterday, and I mean, I kind of had this in my head for a while. So this video has gone on way longer than it needs to, but like I said, this is a work in progress, and feel free to, give me any comments, preferably backed up with, like a reasoned argument for why you maybe think that some of these are wrong, and I don't promise to actually make the whatever change you're suggesting, but I will read it and consider it, and maybe I will. Yeah, I want to do more stuff like this relating to weapons and companions and other things in the Warframe, but there is such a large amount of content in Warframe that it's really hard to create tier lists like this and keep them updated for things other than Warframes, right? For one, I don't have every weapon in the game yet. For another, there's a huge amount of weapons in the game. And it's growing all the time. And yeah, so like I would really need to have every weapon in the game 6-formed, probably, and have spent several hours testing each one and playing around with it and whatnot to really do that. However, I do want to make, I'll probably make something like a top 10 list, right? Like top 10 best primaries or my top 10 favorite primaries. I'd say best probably is a fair assumption, or top 20, right? And I'll probably get some bickering about whether or not, something should have made it into the top 20 or whatnot. But I think there's at least, like, if I make a top 20 list, I'm pretty confident that at least the top 15 out of that belong somewhere in the top 15. And so I could probably make some more lists about stuff like that. And where I will say that this content, this sort of stuff is very useful is if you're a new player. This is how I use tier lists personally myself. If you're a new player and you're getting into the game and you want to pick up your first Warframe, even if you would have fun with, say, Hydroid or Nyx, it might not be a great idea to pick them up first, right? Because they're very niche and they're not super great overall. And that isn't to say you should just pick Trinity, because I didn't actually sort these, but Trinity probably would top my list. I'm not saying you should just pick Trinity. I would not. I don't enjoy Trinity that much most of the time, so I wouldn't do it. However, out of every Warframe in S and A tier, I can almost guarantee you there's one that you would like to play that would make your starting game experience a lot more enjoyable than if you filled up your early resources with, like, you know, building Ember, right? And then you try to go do endgame content and have a really rough time doing it. So that's where I feel tier lists really come in. It's especially good for weapons, so you can like get a weapon progression, especially when you're starting in like a free-to-play game, right? Like Warframe. It's actually, I think, more important in a free-to-play game because you gotta grind if you want to get more stuff without spending money for it, and that grind can be greatly improved or reduced, however you want to put it, if you have, say, like a Speed Nova build to bring around and contribute to squads and help, you know, get yourself into groups in the looking for group chat that are actually a little bit more, you know, active and playing optimally and all that stuff. And that can be very important, especially when you are a casual player, right? A lot of people seem to think like, well, you know, picking stuff that's really good is for tryhards who grind a shitload, right? Well, you know, if you have less time to grind, I kind of have a lot of time right now, but in the past I've had very little time, you know, to play each week, and I find personally I'm a lot happier if I get a lot done in the time I do have. So that's why I often put some effort into playing optimally, picking up optimal Warframes, all that. Okay, so this was kind of a very, very overinflated video, but yeah, I'll link to this website. I'm going to keep it updated. Please let me know what you think, and thank you all for watching. Yakri out.